All right, on today's edition of CastCast, like I just said, we are going to be analyzing the Colts versus the Broncos, and they are playing at Mile High Stadium on Thursday night. Both of these teams are coming off a loss. The Colts lost to the Titans, and the Broncos lost to the Raiders. Both tough pills to swallow, I think, for either team because they were both divisional games. The Colts, to me, in their game, just by watching it, they had too many turnovers. And I think that really hindered their success to score and, catch up to the Titans, who didn't win by much. Didn't win by much at all. One touchdown. But overall, Ryan, the passing game finally came alive, I think, for the first time since the first week of the season. I think this was way better in terms of scheme, who they have, personnel, getting guys open. Obviously, not a very good rushing game, but when you're coming from behind, that just typically happens, even with a running back like Jonathan Taylor. Mo Alley Cox with 2 huge touchdowns where he was seemingly pretty much unguarded on these catches. But I think that I liked what the Colts did. The only thing that I really didn't like were the turnovers that they had in this game. Tennessee, obviously, coming off a win from the Raiders, barely in the week before, and then beating the Colts, they were in the same boat pretty much, where it's they weren't 500. They were below because of some really bad losses, honestly, against, the Giants week 1, which I never would have guessed. The Bills, probably yes. And then, beating the Raiders, huge, and beating the Colts, the division rival, pretty huge. Because at this point in their division, I would likely say that I think that, the Jaguars are playing top-notch football and are the team to beat in this division. But other than that, this team, has been struggling on offense, I think, all year. I think it's been their major problem. They really haven't had a pass game and that sort of thing. And that's really hurt them. Their defense hasn't been playing very well either. I think that it's, imperative that their offense come alive, because I don't think this team is built to have a defense either that is going to hold teams down to very few points. Otherwise, to me, Matt Ryan has been having a very average year. 5 touchdowns, 5 interceptions at this point when I was looking at his stats, with 1,100 yards. 5 touchdowns and 1,100 yards, to me is pretty bad. You're racking up a lot of yards, but you're just not able to score that much. Just overall not very good. But last week, to me, I think they kind of found their formula. They just need to be able to actually keep Jonathan Taylor in the game to be running, because he is the X factor. He is the X factor, on that offense. He had the top rushing last year, and this year it's been kind of rough. The only game that he had, I guess, a lot of yards was game 1 against the Texans with 161. But then otherwise, you're talking about just, kind of an abysmal first 4 weeks. 328 yards isn't what I would imagine him to have. Michael Pittman Jr. leading the receiver corps is, good because he's their young talent. But then I also think that, I guess, another player that really caught my eye in this last week was Alec Pierce, a tall rookie that, had a deep ball that he had to adjust to and go short for, and he adjusted to, showing a lot of wisdom, I guess, because a lot of, rookies would just keep running and they wouldn't make the adjustment for a deep ball on the right side, where, yeah, I'm pretty sure Matt Ryan underthrew him, and I mean he was able to adjust. The cornerback, fell down, and he was able to get a really good catch. But Alec Pierce, I liked what I saw from him. Mo Alley-Cox, I think, can be one of those mismatch type of guys for them that, has good hands, has good athleticism, and can definitely be like a red zone threat. But, I mean, the Titans did play and get confused on a lot of coverages. And I think that it's not going to be so easy to get it to Mo Alley-Cox, after showing that he got 2 touchdowns off of essentially shallow cross routes that were pretty much free. But I think that this team has a very balanced offense if they're able to execute. I just think that they need to cut on the turnovers because even Jonathan Taylor, had the ball stripped from him the last game. Very uncharacteristic. Matt Ryan has obviously thrown 5 picks in 4 weeks. Not a lot, but it's like if you're going to throw a pick every game, I mean, that's just not a very good season. And he's really got to correct that. I don't know if it's growing pains. I know that one of the ones that he threw was tipped at the line and wasn't really, I mean, you could say that maybe it was his fault. I mean, depending on how he's trying to throw it. But tipped at the line is never a good thing, almost always resulting in an interception just because ball floating up in the air is very easy to grab for just about anybody in the league. But I think that if they're able to cut down on their, turnovers that they've been having, that they could definitely give other teams, problems. And if they're able to execute at a high level, in terms of getting first downs, which they've been getting a good amount of first downs, they just haven't been able to score very much. That they will definitely, give some teams some trouble, and I mean, hopefully the defensive side can improve. I mean, to what they were like last year. But otherwise, that's I guess what I think about the Colts right now. The Denver Broncos, on the other hand, to me, have been playing, pretty sloppy football. The fact that they are 500 right now is kind of a miracle to me because they didn't play well against the Texans. Obviously, week 1, they just, a lot of turnovers, penalties. This team is just, I mean, it's very bad in terms of how many penalties that they've been getting. It's just not good for a team to have, 10 plus penalties a game. But otherwise, I mean, a lot of fumbles. Their turnover ratio is not good either. They've been able to control time of possession and that sort of thing. But it's like you look at, the amount of penalties that they've given up, almost 300 yards. Average per game is, 71 yards, which is essentially practically a free touchdown, that they're handing other teams with their penalties. And, I mean, just really bad, 37 through 4 weeks. Like I said, I guess it's not quite 10 a game, but it seemed like that a lot of their penalties are just, backbreaking. And it's just, it's sloppy play, and they really need to do something about it. I think it comes down to coaching and the fact that Hackett doesn't seem like he's cut out to be a head coach at this point. So, and the Broncos, to me, like, they have an offense that's, pretty talented. And they have Russell Wilson, who's been making, some good throws and is definitely given this team a better chance to win than his predecessors like Bridgewater and Drew Lock, who are obviously no longer on the team. Otherwise, I mean, Russ hasn't had, as many passing yards as he wants. Cortland Sutton, I think, is, performing very well. A veteran guy, obviously, been in the league a while, is very good. To me, Javonte Williams, is a pretty good back. I don't think they've been rushing it very well. I think they've been passing it a lot. But Melvin Gordon, to me, he's been having too many fumbles this year. Like 3 fumbles in the first 4 weeks is really bad. 2 of them lost. Javonte Williams, I think, should be maybe their workhorse until Melvin Gordon can correct his fumbling issues. You're seeing less runs from Russell Wilson. I don't know if that's because they're trying to keep him safe because they don't really have that much of a backup or anything like that. But as you can see here, I mean, the 2 leaders, Judy, not really much of a surprise here. A lot of targets, not that many receptions, to be honest with you. But, I mean, some really good plays. And then you've got, KJ Hamler had his first, lawn pass of the season last week. And I think that they should definitely try to get him more involved, a little speedster. But overall, I think the passing for the Broncos is that they need to distribute it to more players. I think that, with the amount of targets that these 2 top guys are getting, that teams are just going to kind of, come on to that, and they're just not going to let, Judy or Sutton run the game. But otherwise, defensively, I think that the Broncos are honestly a bit better than, the Colts by a large margin. A couple of the reasons why they won their prior 2 games before this week is because the defense was able to hold teams to a very limited amount of points. But, looking at their schedule, they lost week 1 against Seattle. Definitely should have been a win, to be honest with you. Wilson honestly lighting them up, and then they had a really bad time at the 1-yard line with 2 fumbles that week. A win against Houston, but Houston honestly had a tie week 1. Not the best of teams. Honestly, the Broncos kind of eked by in this one with how many penalties they had. I think if I remember correctly, there was 13 penalties this game. The San Fran game, honestly, neither of these teams played very well, and it was just kind of who can, have the last possession to go up on top, and that was the Broncos, honestly. Against the Raiders, I kind of predicted this. I felt like the Raiders, were 0-3 coming into this game. Obviously a divisional opponent. But the Raiders, I think, kind of knew and had their back up against the wall, and they finally were able to have, a good run game, which I think exposed the Broncos, to be honest with you. And, looking at this game, I remember that it was a career day, I think, for Jacobs. And he just made it look like the defense was sleeping. I don't know what was with the Broncos defense this game, but they just looked aloof. And I don't know if it's because they were just playing the pass very heavily the whole game, but they just made it way too easy for Jacobs. Huge gaps. Even after the huge gaps, he'd cut through and he'd get guys and he'd break tackles and fake out guys. Sometimes it was just, not a good day for the Broncos defense, run defense. And, they still even got gouged in, the passing game. Devontae Adams was doing work all game, against the Broncos, but it was just really bad. And just not a good game for them. And that sort of thing. But I guess now we're kind of coming down to matchup-wise and that sort of thing. I think that the Broncos, I think that they would match up really well, assuming the Colts are going to go with more of a passing offense because of their struggles in the run game. I don't know if they're going to play Melvin Gordon. He may be I wouldn't say benched, but on limited reps where they split it more with, with their other, with the second half back. But this team, I think you look at this team, and I think you look at the Colts defense. I think it can be a lot better. I think Yannick Ngakoue really has to pop off. DeForest Buckner is always, a force, and Kwity Paye, I think, could have a good game. And I don't think Stephon Gilmore is really going to give up that much to, the Broncos wide receivers, that if they put him on, Judy or Sutton, I think it's kind of it's going to be one of those games where it's like it's going to be very tough for them to get the ball to them. But I honestly like the Colts more in this game because I think that, if it's any consolation, I think that Jonathan Taylor could, finally have a game where he, breaks out and does really well for the second time this season if the Broncos defense is not ready for the run this game, because Jonathan Taylor is definitely a more explosive back than Josh Jacobs is who they played the week before. And I just think that the Colts know that since they're going to be playing the Jaguars the following week, that this is kind of a huge game, because if you drop this game and then you play Jacksonville, who's been playing very well, has seemingly had your number the last two games, I think that, you're going to be in a world of hurt if you're going into week 7 and you're 1-4-1. I just don't think that that's really good. Like you got 5 games that are kind of, for the most part, counting against you at this point, because I don't think tying with the Texans is going to help them. The Texans aren't going to do anything. And, at the end of the season, I guess it could come into play. Like maybe they need only so many wins. But for the most part, I think that, the Colts have, I guess, a pretty average schedule in my opinion, but definitely none of I don't think that the way that they've been playing, unless they start getting really consistent, that this is kind of a must-win game, because if they win this game and they feel good and they get a long week before they go to Jacksonville, which is at home, but Jacksonville, has been having their number, so it's like I think that, the Colts are going to want to win this game and then get the long week and then go to Jacksonville and win, because the Colts definitely should have honestly beat Tennessee. They just had too many mistakes. I think Tennessee played a good game, but I think that they just really didn't prove offensively that Tennessee is still, that effective. And that they were just given some shorter fields, and that's why they were able to score more. But, the Broncos, to me, they're 2-2 at this point. They're playing Indianapolis, and then they're going to the Chargers, which I think, is definitely one of those games that you'd think, they would want to win, because it's a division matchup on Monday night. And, seemingly to me, a lot of the games, I guess, that they have remaining are tougher games. Like, it doesn't look to me like the Broncos, are going to have a very easy road at the end of the season. Like, I'm looking at this, and I think the easiest teams that they have to play are Carolina and Tennessee. And then even Arizona, at this point, might be picking up traction as like the third worst team. But then all these other teams, are playoff teams. Probably. The Chargers, have been having a rough go at it, but I think that they're going to be a playoff team. And you really, if you're the Broncos, the easy part of your schedule is the first half of the year. But both of these teams are kind of backed up against the wall. I know that the game, they're saying that the Broncos are going to win. I personally think that the Broncos don't match up as well. And, I mean, if their run defense is as horrific as it was this last week, they're doomed against Indianapolis. I don't care if, I don't care if Indianapolis hasn't been able to run the ball very well with Jonathan Taylor. Their O-line is still one of the most talented in the league. And eventually they're going to work it out just like they did with the offense. And I think Matt Ryan, a little bit of a rocky start, but I think that things are going to start to come together like they did last week. They just need to cut the turnovers, which obviously Denver, has had turnovers as well. So it's just, but they also have a lot more penalties than the Colts. But because I think that the Colts have, a better defense at this point that has been performing pretty well, and I mean the Broncos' run defense, has kind of shown that I lose faith in them. That I'm actually going to go with the Colts by 3, and I think it is not going to be a high-scoring game. But I think that each team, is going to be around 20 or so points. And that's honestly what I think about Thursday night football. And thank you for watching.